The red-eye from Washington to Dallas always left me feeling disconnected from reality. 3 days of classified briefings at the Pentagon had my mind buzzing with threat assessments, security protocols, and the endless dance of national defense contracting. As I pulled into our driveway in Plano at 11:47 p.m., the familiar sight of our colonial-style home should have brought comfort. Instead, something felt different. I'd been Jonathan Sterling, John to everyone, for 45 years. Former Navy intelligence officer turned senior project manager for Blackstone Defense Systems. 16 years married to Rebecca, Becca, with our 14-year-old son Tyler safely tucked away in his bedroom, presumably dreaming about whatever high school freshmen dream about these days. This was supposed to be the life I'd built. Stable, secure, predictable. The house was dark, except for the blue glow emanating from the living room. I found Becca asleep on the couch, her blonde hair spilled across the throw pillow, still in the yoga pants and oversized sweater she'd worn that morning when I left for the airport. The television flickered some late-night talk show, but what caught my attention was the phone in her relaxed hand. Her iPhone 14 Pro, usually protected by a passcode as rigid as Fort Knox, lay there with the screen still illuminated. In my intelligence training, we called moments like this opportunity windows, brief instances where information becomes available that might otherwise remain hidden. I wasn't planning to snoop. I was planning to plug her phone into the charger and turn off the TV, the same routine I'd performed dozens of times when she fell asleep watching her shows. But as I reached for the phone, the screen content stopped me cold. A text conversation was open. The contact name read Derek, with a purple heart emoji I'd never seen before. The last message, time-stamped 11:23 p.m., just 24 minutes ago, read, "Can't wait for this weekend when your husband's traveling again. I've missed your body so much, beautiful. The way you looked at me today at the hotel had me thinking about you all evening." My Navy intelligence training kicked in immediately. Pattern recognition, threat assessment, operational security. In that split second, I understood I was looking at an active security breach in my own home. Not just personal betrayal, though that hit like a sledgehammer to the solar plexus, but a potential compromise of classified information. I carefully lifted the phone from Becca's hand. She didn't stir. The muscle relaxers she'd been taking for her back pain knocked her out cold most nights. My hands remained steady as I scrolled through the message thread. 20 years of handling sensitive intelligence had taught me to compartmentalize emotion and focus on facts. The conversation history painted a clear picture. 6 months of intimate exchanges. Plans coordinated around my travel schedule. References to weekend getaways that occurred precisely when I was away on classified briefings. Most concerning were the messages that referenced my work schedule, facility access times, and travel patterns with an accuracy that suggested she'd been sharing my controlled, unclassified information. "Your husband said he'll be in D.C. until Friday, right? That gives us 3 full days at the Omni. I've already booked the suite." Derek had written 2 weeks ago. "Yes, he's doing some kind of security assessment or the government buildings. He left me his itinerary. I'll send it to you so you know exactly when he'll be back." Becca had responded. My blood pressure spiked. She'd been sharing my official travel schedules. As a defense contractor with top-secret clearance, my movements and activities fell under strict operational security protocols. Unauthorized disclosure of this information constituted a potential NISPOM violation. I opened the photo gallery within their conversation. Dozens of images spanning the past 6 months. Becca, and a man I didn't recognize, tall, dark-haired, appearing to be in his late 30s, at restaurants, hotels, and what appeared to be construction sites. The metadata showed locations and timestamps that corresponded exactly with my documented business trips. One photo made my stomach drop. Becca and Derek standing in what appeared to be a hotel room, but visible in the background were several documents spread across a desk. I zoomed in, and my worst fears were confirmed. Floor plans, security protocols, contractor access schedules, all clearly marked with controlled, unclassified information headers. In the intelligence community, we have a saying, assume the worst-case scenario and work backwards. The worst-case scenario here wasn't just that my wife was having an affair. It was that she was conducting the affair with someone who might be exploiting our relationship to gain access to sensitive government facility information. I screenshot the critical messages and photos, following proper chain of custody protocols I'd learned in the Navy. Each image was time-stamped and organized methodically. If this situation escalated to a security investigation, which seemed increasingly likely, I needed irrefutable documentation. My next step was research. Still standing in our living room, listening to Becca's steady breathing, I used my personal phone to search for information about Derek. The messages had enough context clues. His profession as an architect, references to Meridian Construction, and mentions of the Premier Interiors project to identify him quickly. Derek Ashton, 38, principal architect at Meridian Construction Group, recently divorced. His LinkedIn profile showed involvement in several government facility renovation projects over the past year, projects that fell under the oversight of companies like mine. The pieces were clicking together with the cold precision of an intelligence briefing. Derek worked in construction. He'd recently gone through a divorce. He'd begun pursuing my wife approximately 6 months ago, coinciding with his divorce finalization. And he'd somehow gained access to controlled information about government facilities through their relationship. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a systematic operation. I carefully placed Becca's phone back in her hand, turned off the television, and went upstairs to my home office. For the next 3 hours, I conducted the most thorough background investigation of my life. Derek Ashton's professional history revealed a pattern of pursuing contracts with government agencies. His construction firm had bid on numerous federal projects over the past 2 years, with a surprisingly high success rate for a relatively small operation. Cross-referencing his wins against my own travel schedule revealed something that made my blood run cold. Every major contract Derek's company had secured corresponded with time periods when I was traveling for classified briefings related to those same facilities. By 3 a.m., I had compiled a comprehensive dossier. Derek's company, Meridian Construction, had received $2.3 million in federal contracts over the past 18 months. The procurement dates aligned perfectly with information that would have been available through my work schedules and facility access documentation. Information that Becca had been photographing and sharing. I sat back in my leather office chair, looking out at the pre-dawn darkness of our suburban neighborhood. Tomorrow morning, Tyler would wake up and stumble downstairs for breakfast before school. Becca would make her coffee and kiss me goodbye before heading to her interior design job at Premier Interiors. On the surface, everything would appear normal, but I now knew that our marriage was a cover for what appeared to be a sophisticated procurement fraud operation. Derek wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was using her to gain illegal access to source selection information for federal contracts. The personal betrayal burned like acid in my chest. 16 years of marriage, shared dreams, Tyler's childhood. All of it compromised by Becca's decision to risk everything for someone who was clearly using her. But the professional implications demanded immediate action. As someone with a top-secret security clearance, I had mandatory reporting requirements. Any potential compromise of classified or controlled information had to be reported to my facility security officer within 24 hours. The question was how to handle this strategically. My Navy intelligence background had taught me that emotional reactions led to operational failures. I needed to approach this systematically, preserving evidence while protecting both national security interests and my family's future. First, I would continue gathering intelligence. Document everything. Build an airtight case. Then I would coordinate with the appropriate authorities to ensure proper investigation of the security breach. Finally, I would handle the personal situation with the same tactical precision I'd use for any other operational challenge. Becca had made her choice. Now I would make mine. At 6:30 a.m. I heard movement downstairs. Becca was starting her morning routine. I saved my research files to an encrypted drive, secured my office, and prepared to begin what would be the most challenging operation of my career. The target: my own wife. The mission: protect national security while rebuilding my life from the ruins of deception. I walked downstairs to find Becca making coffee, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, humming something under her breath. She looked up with a bright smile that once made my heart skip beats. "Good morning, honey. How was your trip? You got in so late I didn't even hear you come home." The casual lie rolled off her tongue with practiced ease. I wondered how many others she'd told over the past 6 months. "The briefings were productive," I replied, accepting the coffee mug she handed me. "Learned quite a bit about current security threats?" She had no idea how true that statement was. "That's nice, dear. I have a busy day ahead. Several client meetings at Premiere. Derek and I are finalizing plans for the Morrison project." There it was. Derek's name dropping into casual conversation with the comfort of long familiarity. She was still lying to my face while discussing the man she'd been intimate with just hours after I'd discovered their affair. "Derek?" I asked, maintaining neutral tone. "The architect you've mentioned before?" "Yes, from Meridian Construction. He's really talented, very dedicated to his work." The slight pause before "dedicated" told me everything I needed to know about what else Derek was dedicated to. Tyler bounded into the kitchen, backpack slung over his shoulder, looking more like his mother every day. 14 years old and completely unaware that his family was about to implode. "Morning, Dad. Mom said you were in Washington. Did you meet the president?" Tyler's innocent enthusiasm hit me harder than discovering the affair. This kid deserved better than parents who lied to each other and compromised national security for personal gain. "Not this trip, buddy. Just meetings with people who work to keep our country safe." "Cool. Maybe someday I can do that kind of work too." Over my dead body, would my son grow up thinking that deception and betrayal were acceptable ways to live? If I handled this situation correctly, Tyler might actually learn something valuable about integrity and consequence. After Tyler left for school, Becca kissed my cheek and headed out for her client meetings. I watched her drive away, knowing she was probably texting Derek before she'd even left our subdivision. By 8 a.m., I was in my Blackstone Defense Systems office, requesting an immediate meeting with our facility security officer, Director Patricia Wells. Patricia had 25 years of experience with the Defense Security Service and had earned my respect through her meticulous approach to security protocols. John, you look like someone ran over your dog. What's going on? Patricia closed her office door and gestured to the chair across from her desk. I need to file a self-report for potential NISPOM violation and possible compromise of controlled, unclassified information. Patricia's expression immediately shifted to professional alertness. Self-reports were serious business in the defense contracting world. They could trigger federal investigations and impact security clearances. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. For the next hour, I provided a clinical briefing of my discoveries. The phone conversation. The documented pattern of information sharing. Derek's construction company and their suspicious success rate with federal contracts. The photographic evidence of controlled documents in hotel rooms. Patricia took notes with the methodical precision of someone who understood the gravity of what I was reporting. John, I have to ask this directly. Do you believe your wife understood she was compromising classified information? I believe she knew my work involved sensitive government contracts. Whether she understood the specific implications of sharing my travel schedules and facility access information, that's harder to determine. But the fact remains that controlled information has been compromised. And you suspect Derek Ashton was specifically targeting this information for procurement advantage? The pattern of his contract awards corresponding with my travel schedule suggests systematic exploitation rather than coincidence. Patricia nodded grimly. This requires immediate escalation to DCSA. I'll need your complete documentation, and we'll need to coordinate with the FBI's procurement fraud unit. This isn't just a security clearance issue. This could be criminal conspiracy. Within 2 hours, I was sitting across from Special Agent Maria Rodriguez from the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency. Rodriguez was a compact woman in her early 40s, with the sharp eyes of someone who'd spent years identifying threats to national security. Mr. Sterling, I want to commend you for your immediate reporting of this potential security breach. In our experience, family-related compromises are often the most difficult for cleared personnel to identify and report. Agent Rodriguez, I swore an oath to protect classified information 20 years ago. That oath doesn't have exceptions for personal relationships. Understood. Now, I need to ask some difficult questions about your wife's activities and your knowledge of her relationship with Derek Ashton. For the next 3 hours, Agent Rodriguez conducted the most thorough interview of my life. Every detail of Becca's behavioral changes over the past 6 months. Her increased secrecy about her phone and work activities. The correlation between my travel schedule and her client meetings. My security protocols at home and whether Becca had access to any work materials. The most damning evidence was the photographs I'd taken of her phone screen, clearly showing controlled documents in the background of her hotel room pictures with Derek. Mr. Sterling, based on what you've reported, we're looking at potential violations of 18 U.S.C. Section 371, conspiracy to defraud the United States, and Section 1031, major fraud against the United States. We'll be coordinating with the FBI's procurement fraud unit to investigate Derek Ashton's construction company. What does this mean for my security clearance? Your immediate reporting and full cooperation actually strengthens your clearance status. You've demonstrated exactly the kind of security consciousness we require from cleared personnel. However, we'll need your continued cooperation as this investigation develops. That afternoon, I received a call from Agent David Chen with the FBI's procurement fraud unit. Chen was investigating a broader pattern of bid rigging and procurement fraud in government construction contracts. Derek Ashton's company had been on their radar for several months. Mr. Sterling, your report has provided crucial evidence for our ongoing investigation. We've been tracking irregular patterns in federal construction contracts, and Derek Ashton's success rate was already flagged as statistically anomalous. How long has your investigation been active? 8 months. We've identified several companies that appear to have had advanced knowledge of source selection criteria and facility requirements. Your documentation provides the missing link showing how that information was being obtained. The FBI was already preparing search warrants for Derek's construction office and Premier Interiors. They were building a case that could result in serious federal charges and permanent debarment from government contracting. I drove home that evening knowing that I'd set in motion a series of events that would fundamentally change multiple lives. But I'd also fulfilled my obligation to protect national security and taxpayer dollars from fraud. Becca was in the kitchen when I arrived, preparing dinner with the same domestic contentment she'd shown for 16 years. Tyler was at the dining room table working on algebra homework. "How was your day, honey?" she asked. The same question she'd asked thousands of times before. "Productive. We identified some security vulnerabilities that needed immediate attention." Again, completely true. Just not in the way she assumed. "That's good. I had a long day too." Derek and I spent most of it reviewing construction specifications for the Morrison project. He's very thorough in his work. The way she said Derek's name, with that slight emphasis and pause, made it clear she was still thinking about him. Still lying to my face while discussing the man who was using her to defraud the government. After dinner, I helped Tyler with his homework while Becca cleaned the kitchen. Normal family activities that felt surreal given what I now knew about our situation. At 9 p.m., Becca announced she was going upstairs to take a bath and catch up on some reading. Translation: she was going to text Derek without me around to observe. An hour later, I went upstairs and found her in bed, phone in hand, smiling at something on the screen. "Work stuff again?" I asked. "Oh, just finalizing some details for tomorrow's meeting. You know how demanding clients can be." I knew exactly how demanding Derek could be. And tomorrow's meeting was probably another hotel room encounter coordinated around my work schedule. The next morning brought a call from Agent Rodriguez with an update that changed everything. "Mr. Sterling, we executed search warrants this morning at Derek Ashton's construction office and Premier Interiors. What we found exceeds our initial concerns about procurement fraud." "How so?" Derek Ashton had detailed files on multiple defense contractors and their personnel. Floor plans, security protocols, facility access schedules, and personal information on cleared employees. This appears to be a systematic intelligence-gathering operation, not just opportunistic fraud. My blood went cold. "Are you saying this was espionage?" "We're still analyzing the evidence, but Derek Ashton's activities suggest possible economic espionage targeting defense contractors. Your wife may have been one of several sources of information." The implications hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just about my marriage or even procurement fraud. Derek might have been running a sophisticated intelligence operation targeting the defense industry, and Becca had been his unwitting asset. "Agent Rodriguez, what does this mean for my wife?" "That depends on her level of knowledge and cooperation. We'll be bringing her in for questioning this afternoon. I recommend she have legal representation." I spent the morning contacting Robert Kim, the best defense attorney in Dallas. Kim had handled numerous federal cases involving defense contractors and understood the complexities of security clearance investigations. "John, based on what you've told me, Your wife is looking at potential charges for conspiracy to defraud the government and possibly espionage. However, her cooperation with the investigation could result in a plea agreement. What about Derek? If the FBI's assessment is correct, Derek Ashton is facing serious federal charges that could result in decades in prison. Economic espionage against defense contractors is prosecuted aggressively. At 2 p.m., FBI agents arrived at Premier Interiors to arrest Derek Ashton. By 3 p.m., they were at our house to bring Becca in for questioning. I was in my home office when I heard the doorbell. Through my window, I could see the black SUVs in our driveway. Tyler wouldn't be home from school for another hour, which was a small mercy. I went downstairs to find Becca standing in our foyer, her face white with shock, staring at Agent Rodriguez and two other federal agents. Mrs. Sterling, we need you to come with us for questioning regarding your relationship with Derek Ashton and potential compromising of classified information. Becca's eyes found mine across the room. For the first time in 6 months, I saw real fear in her expression. John, I don't understand what's happening. Becca, I've arranged for Robert Kim to meet you at the federal building. Don't say anything until he arrives. As the agents escorted her to their vehicle, Becca looked back at me with desperate confusion. The woman who'd been lying to my face for 6 months suddenly realized that her choices had consequences beyond her personal gratification. Tyler came home at 4 p.m. to find me sitting at the kitchen table, trying to figure out how to explain that his mother had been arrested by the FBI. Dad? Where's Mom? Her car's not here. Tyler, sit down. We need to have a serious conversation about what's been happening in our family. For the next hour, I explained as gently as possible that his mother had been making poor decisions that affected both our family and national security. I didn't go into the details of the affair, but I made it clear that Becca had violated laws regarding sensitive information. Tyler listened with the same analytical intelligence he'd inherited from both parents. Dad, is Mom going to prison? I don't know, son. That depends on what she did and whether she cooperates with the investigation. But I want you to know that whatever happens, we're going to get through this together. Are you and Mom getting divorced? The directness of the question shouldn't have surprised me. Tyler had always been perceptive about family dynamics. Probably, yes. Your mother has been dishonest about some very important things, and trust is essential in a marriage. Tyler nodded slowly. I've noticed things were weird lately. She's been acting different, secretive. That evening, Robert Kim called with an update from Becca's interrogation. John, your wife is cooperating fully with the investigation. She's agreed to a proffer agreement that will provide her with limited immunity in exchange for complete disclosure about her relationship with Derek Ashton. What has she told them? Derek systematically cultivated their relationship to gain access to your work information. He told her he was interested in government contract opportunities and needed to understand facility requirements and security protocols. She thought she was helping his legitimate business interests. Did she understand she was sharing classified information? She claims Derek convinced her that the information was publicly available through proper channels and that she was just providing context for his proposals. She didn't understand the sensitivity of your travel schedules and facility access documentation. I felt a mixture of anger and pity. Becca had been manipulated by someone who understood exactly how to exploit her desire to feel important and appreciated. But her willingness to share my work information, regardless of her understanding of its sensitivity, showed a fundamental lack of respect for my professional obligations. The next morning brought news that Derek Ashton had been formally charged with conspiracy to defraud the United States, major fraud against the United States, and economic espionage. The FBI had discovered evidence that he'd been targeting multiple defense contractors through personal relationships and professional connections. Becca's cooperation had earned her a plea agreement that would result in probation and community service rather than prison time. But the consequences for her personally and professionally would be severe. Premier Interiors terminated her immediately for involving the company in a federal investigation. Her professional reputation in the interior design industry was destroyed. Derek, however, faced 18 to 36 months in federal prison. His construction company was permanently debarred from federal contracting, and he was excluded from the system for award management that governed government business opportunities. More importantly for me, the FBI's investigation revealed that Derek had been specifically targeting cleared defense contractor personnel for intelligence gathering. My immediate reporting had helped expose a broader threat to national security. Agent Rodriguez called to inform me that DCSA was recommending me for recognition for exemplary security consciousness and insider threat reporting. Mr. Sterling, your actions potentially prevented the compromise of multiple classified programs and saved taxpayers millions of dollars in fraudulent contract awards. Your security clearance has been upgraded with a commendation for outstanding security awareness. The irony wasn't lost on me. My wife's betrayal had resulted in career advancement and recognition for integrity under pressure. 3 weeks after Becca's arrest, I filed for divorce. The federal investigation evidence made the proceedings straightforward. Family Court Judge Sarah Martinez reviewed the case materials with the clinical detachment of someone who'd seen every variation of human failure. Mr. Sterling, given the evidence of Mrs. Sterling's involvement in federal criminal activity and the documented pattern of deception involving your minor child, I'm inclined to award you primary custody with supervised visitation for Mrs. Sterling. Tyler had been interviewed by guardian ad litem Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who determined that his emotional stability required a consistent environment free from the chaos that Becca's choices had created. The asset division favored me significantly. Becca's legal fees, loss of income, and liability for restitution in the federal case left her with minimal resources. The house, Tyler's college fund, and our retirement accounts remained largely intact for our future. 6 months after discovering that unlocked phone, I was a single father with full custody, an enhanced security clearance, and professional recognition for exemplary conduct under pressure. The personal cost had been enormous, but I'd protected both national security and my son's future. Tyler adapted to our new life with remarkable resilience. His grades remained strong, and he'd started talking about pursuing a career in intelligence or national security. The experience had taught him valuable lessons about integrity and consequence that would serve him well. Dad, I know what Mom did was wrong, but I'm proud of how you handled it. You did the right thing even when it was hard. That observation from my 14-year-old son meant more than any professional recognition I could receive. My expertise in insider threat detection had attracted attention throughout the defense industry. Companies were requesting briefings on recognizing and responding to security compromises. I'd begun consulting on security awareness training programs and developing protocols for family-related security risks. Agent Rodriguez had become a regular professional contact as I helped develop training materials for DCSA. Our working relationship was built on mutual respect for professional integrity and shared commitment to national security. One evening, 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Maria called to discuss a new insider threat training initiative. John, Would you be interested in co-presenting at the National Security Association conference next month? Your perspective on recognizing and responding to family-related security compromises would be valuable for cleared personnel. Absolutely. This type of threat is more common than people realize, and proper response protocols can protect both security and careers. After ending the call, I realized that Maria Rodriguez was someone I genuinely enjoyed working with. Professional, intelligent, dedicated to mission accomplishment. The complete opposite of someone who would compromise integrity for personal gratification. Tyler noticed the change in my demeanor after our professional conversations. Dad, you seem different when you talk about work with Agent Rodriguez. Good different. The kid was still too perceptive for his own good. She's a consummate professional, Tyler. It's refreshing to work with people who share your values. Maybe you should ask her to dinner sometime. You know, when you're not talking about national security stuff. I looked at my son with surprise. Tyler, she's a federal agent. Our relationship is strictly professional. Dad, you've been divorced for 6 months. You're allowed to have a personal life again. And Agent Rodriguez seems like someone who would never lie to you or compromise your work. Once again, Tyler's insight was unnervingly accurate. The National Security Association conference was held in Arlington, Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C. Maria and I presented a joint session on family-related insider threats, recognition, response, and recovery. Our presentation drew a standing ovation from an audience of cleared personnel who understood how difficult it could be to report security compromises involving family members. After the presentation, Maria and I found ourselves in the hotel bar, decompressing from the intense 3-day conference. John, I have to say, your ability to turn a personal catastrophe into professional development is remarkable. Most people would have been destroyed by what you went through. Navy intelligence training teaches you to focus on mission accomplishment regardless of personal circumstances. Plus, I had Tyler to think about. He needed to see that integrity has value even when it's costly. How is Tyler handling everything? Better than I expected. He's talking about applying to the Naval Academy, wants to serve his country and work in intelligence. He has an excellent role model. There was something in Maria's tone that suggested she wasn't just talking about professional admiration. I found myself looking at her differently, not just as Agent Rodriguez, but as Maria. An accomplished woman who dedicated her career to protecting national security. Someone who understood the weight of classified responsibilities and the importance of integrity. Maria, would you like to have dinner tomorrow night? Somewhere we can talk about things other than security protocols. She smiled. The first time I'd seen her expression soften from professional reserve. I'd like that very much, John. That dinner led to other dinners. Professional conversations evolved into personal ones. I learned that Maria had been married briefly in her 20s to someone who couldn't handle the demands of her career. She'd focused on professional development for the past decade, building expertise in counterintelligence and insider threat detection. Most importantly, Maria understood the world I lived in. Security clearances, travel schedules, the weight of protecting national secrets. She would never compromise that for personal gain because she carried the same responsibilities. Tyler approved immediately. Dad, she's perfect for you. Smart, honest, and she carries a gun. What more could you want? I couldn't argue with his logic. 2 years after discovering Becca's affair, I was living a life I couldn't have imagined. My consulting firm, Sterling Security Solutions, had become the premier insider threat prevention company in the defense industry. Tyler was thriving academically and had received an appointment to the Naval Academy. And Maria had become my partner in both professional and personal endeavors. Becca's life had followed a different trajectory. Her cooperation with the federal investigation had kept her out of prison, but the consequences had been severe. No interior design firm would hire someone whose federal case involvement was documented in public records. She'd moved to Arizona to stay with her sister and was working retail jobs that didn't require background checks. Derek Ashton had served 28 months in federal prison and been released to permanent exile from the construction industry. His federal conviction and contractor debarment meant he could never work on government projects again. He'd moved to Oregon and was reportedly working in residential construction under someone else's license. The justice of their situations wasn't lost on me. Both had chosen to compromise integrity for immediate gratification. Both were living with permanent consequences for those choices. Meanwhile, my decision to prioritize integrity over personal comfort had led to professional recognition, personal growth, and a relationship built on shared values and mutual respect. Maria and I married 3 years after meeting, in a small ceremony attended by Tyler, her family, and colleagues from the intelligence community. Tyler served as my best man, wearing his Naval Academy dress uniform with obvious pride. During our honeymoon in Hawaii, I received a call from the House Armed Services Committee requesting my testimony on insider threat prevention in defense contracting. My expertise, developed through personal crisis and professional dedication, was now informing national policy. Congressman Williams, I'm honored to share what we've learned about recognizing and responding to insider threats. The defense of our nation depends on the integrity of those entrusted with sensitive information. My congressional testimony was broadcast on C-SPAN and became required viewing for defense contractor security training. The irony was profound. Becca's betrayal had led to national recognition for expertise in preventing exactly the type of compromise she'd enabled. Tyler graduated from the Naval Academy with distinction and was selected for intelligence officer training. At his commissioning ceremony, he thanked me for teaching him that integrity wasn't just a word. It was a way of life that required constant vigilance and sometimes difficult choices. Maria and I had built a life together based on shared mission, mutual respect, and absolute honesty. Our combined expertise in defense contracting and federal law enforcement created synergies that benefited both our careers and our personal relationship. 5 years after that night when I discovered Becca's unlocked phone, I was testifying before Congress about insider threat prevention, while my son prepared for his first intelligence assignment and my wife developed new counterintelligence protocols for federal agencies. The personal cost had been enormous. 16 years of marriage, family traditions, shared history, all destroyed by someone else's choices. But the aftermath had proven that integrity under pressure creates opportunities that comfort and complacency never could. During a recent security conference, a young defense contractor approached me after my presentation on family-related insider threats. Mr. Sterling, how did you find the courage to report your own wife for security violations? That must have been the hardest decision of your life. Actually, it was one of the easiest decisions I've ever made. When you've sworn an oath to protect classified information, you don't get to choose which oath matters based on personal convenience. Integrity means doing the right thing, especially when it costs you something important. That evening, Tyler called from his first duty assignment to discuss his initial intelligence briefings. "Dad, everything you taught me about recognizing patterns and assessing threats is exactly what we're learning here. My instructors keep talking about the importance of moral courage in intelligence work. Moral courage is what separates professional intelligence officers from people who just happen to have security clearances, Tyler. Your mother forgot that distinction. Make sure you never do." "I won't, Dad. I've seen what happens when people compromise their integrity. I've also seen what happens when they choose to do the right thing regardless of personal cost." As I ended the call, Maria came into my office with tea and sat beside me. "How's our intelligence officer?" "Learning that everything his old man taught him about integrity actually matters in the real world." "You did good, John. Tyler's going to make an outstanding intelligence officer because he learned from someone who proved that principles matter more than personal comfort." I looked around my office at the awards, recognition certificates, and photos from congressional briefings. Evidence of a career built on professional expertise developed through personal crisis. On my desk was the security clearance upgrade notification that had arrived after my exemplary reporting of Becca's compromise. Below it was our wedding photo, Maria and me standing together in our dress uniforms, representing the partnership between law enforcement and defense contracting. Beside that was Tyler's commissioning photo, proud and confident in his Naval Academy uniform, ready to serve his country with the integrity his father had modeled under the worst possible circumstances. The unlocked phone that had revealed Becca's betrayal had actually unlocked opportunities I never could have imagined. Professional recognition, personal growth, a marriage built on shared values, and a son prepared to serve his nation with distinction. Sometimes the worst things that happen to you become the foundation for the best things in your life, but only if you choose integrity over convenience, mission accomplishment over personal comfort, and long-term principles over short-term gratification. Becca had made her choice when she decided that immediate pleasure mattered more than family loyalty and national security. Derek had made his choice when he decided to exploit personal relationships for professional advantage. I had made mine when I chose to protect classified information, even when it meant destroying my marriage and devastating my family. 5 years later, the scorecard was clear. Integrity under pressure had created lasting value. Compromise for immediate gratification had created permanent consequences. The lesson was simple, though not easy. When you're entrusted with sensitive responsibilities, every choice matters. Every relationship is a potential vulnerability. Every moment of weakness can compromise years of professional development. But every act of integrity, especially when it costs you something important, builds character that can't be taken away by other people's choices. That unlocked phone had revealed more than my wife's betrayal. It had revealed who I really was when everything I cared about was at stake. Turned out, I was someone who chose mission accomplishment over personal comfort. Someone who protected national security even when it meant sacrificing personal happiness. Someone who understood that integrity isn't tested when it's convenient. It's tested when it costs you everything you thought mattered. And in the end, that integrity had built something better than what I'd lost. A life based on truth instead of deception. A marriage built on shared values instead of comfortable lies. A son who understood that principles matter more than personal convenience. The phone call that had started this entire journey came from Agent Rodriguez, now my wife, with news that our insider threat prevention protocols had been adopted by the Department of Defense as the new standard for all defense contractors. "John, Our work is now protecting classified information for every defense contractor in the country. What started as your personal crisis has become a national security asset. I looked out the window of my office at the American flag flying over our corporate headquarters. Sterling Security Solutions had grown from a personal catastrophe into a company that protected the nation's most sensitive information. Tyler was serving his country as an intelligence officer. Maria was advancing counterintelligence capabilities that kept America safe. I was training the next generation of cleared personnel to recognize and respond to insider threats. All because one night, I'd chosen to look at an unlocked phone and then chosen to do the right thing with what I found. The final irony was perfect. Becca's betrayal had led to the greatest professional success of my career, the strongest marriage of my life, and the deepest pride in my son's character. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. But only if you choose integrity when it matters most. And it always matters most when it costs you everything you thought you couldn't live without. That's when you discover what you're really made of. That's when you learn whether your principles are conveniences or convictions. Becca had learned that her principles were conveniences. I had learned that mine were convictions. The difference had changed everything.